Before we start, I have a question for you to think about during this episode. So, Desert Island, top 5 lists, and what you would bring questions are pretty ubiquitous. Like, we've all heard a bunch of them. You're familiar with them. You know what I'm talking about here, right? Desert Island questions? Okay.
Sure.
So, my question to you is, the stranded on a desert island, you can bring any one thing question. What is the worst answer you've ever heard? And what is the best answer you've ever heard to that question? So you can think about that while we shoot the episode right now.
Okay.
Your local video store card.
A comic book in your back pocket.
Games with no tutorials.
Music you had to discover.
And drinking water straight from the hose.
These are the things us millennials remember fondly. We are the Jennings brothers.
Join us after the streetlights come on
as we race our bikes from the top of the hill
right down memory lane.
Exchange those quarters because this podcast takes tokens.
You find yourself in pitch blackness. The air is warm against your face, and your body aches in pain. You open your eyes to the sight of a tropical canopy looming high above you and the blue sky beyond. Sitting up, you hear the screams and wails of people, seemingly in trouble, off in the distance. You stand and run towards the sound. As you break through the foliage, you see a vast beach spreading out in front of you. People, alive and dead, scattered here and there along the sand. What remains of the airplane that you were a passenger on only moments ago is broken, burning, and strung in a metallic disarray as far as the eye can see. You rush into the madness with no clue of where you are or what caused the disaster before you. You are Jack Shepherd, and you are lost. So yeah, what we're going to be talking about today is one of my all-time, if not my all-time favorite television series ever. We're going to be talking about Lost.
Controversial.
Oh, yeah. No. Maybe just the last season. I don't know.
I think just the last season.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with Lost, it is a mystery drama series, ran from September 22nd, 2004 through May 23rd, 2010 on ABC. It ran for 6 seasons and 121, I think, fantastic episodes, maybe 120 fantastic episodes, but we'll discuss the ending here in a little bit. So I did have, for any of us out there that are not that familiar with the show, I did have our friend ChatGPT help me get a summary, just a brief summary of the show. So it's Lost is like I said, a mystery drama television series that follows the survivors of Oceanic Flight 815, which crashes on a mysterious island in the South Pacific. The show explores their struggles for survival, their interpersonal conflicts and encounters with supernatural elements on the island. As the series progresses, it delves into the characters' backstories through flashbacks, flash forwards, flash sideways, and it's kind of like the peeling of an onion, I think. So it's like every single episode just kind of pulls something back and just reveals a little bit more, and I really think that's what kind of hooks people that watch the show. It's what hooked me and really, brings you into the show. It was nominated for 51 Primetime Emmys, with 10 wins, and included Outstanding Drama Series, Outstanding Director, J.J. Abrams, I love most of J.J. Abrams' stuff. He's great. Outstanding supporting actor, Terry O'Quinn as John Locke. Also, Michael Emerson as Benjamin Linus. It was nominated for 7 Golden Globes with 1 win, won Best Drama Series. And I looked up, I was curious how many viewers this was having on average. You want to take a guess how many the average of how many viewers each episode it had?
Oh, let's see. You said 2004 to 2010. I would guess average of the entire series or average like in the beginning?
Average per episode throughout the entire... They took all the numbers from the entire series and averaged it out.
10 million per.
Close. Right. 11 million viewers per episode.
Right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Filmed in Hawaii, too.
They did film it in Hawaii. And the locales on this show are just...
killer,
gorgeous, and I love it. That's one of my favorite things about watching the show is just looking at all the different, scenery and everything on the show. Yeah,
you said it started in 2004, September of 2004.
2004. Yep.
That means it's almost 20 years old.
I know. Gosh,
that's wild.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
20 years ago. That's crazy.
Oh my gosh. That would be like,
it's almost old enough to drink and get its own DUI.
It is. You know what? I don't even know if Nick at Night's still a thing, but this means this could probably air on Nick at Night. Because when we were kids,
Nick at Night is a thing, but I mean, it's all Friends and Mike and Molly right now. Whenever we go on vacation, we find Nick at Night and we watch Friends and Mike and Molly when we go to bed.
Oh my gosh. Like when we were growing up, it was like the Dick Van Dyke Show, Three's Company, Brady Bunch.
Bewitched.
And man, gosh, if that doesn't make you feel old, it's just nuts.
20 years, that's crazy.
That is nuts, man. So a couple of the main cast, I thought I'd just kind of run down some main cast members, and then we can kind of get into some discussions on this. So there was a lot of people that came and went on this show. There's a lot of fairly big names, and then there's some that aren't as well known. No. I think this show made names for several people. But really the main cast that I just kind of wanted to recognize here. So, like I said in my opener, Jack Shephard, he is probably arguably the main character throughout the whole series. He was a doctor. The reason he was on the flight, he was bringing his dead father home from Australia. John Locke, he was actually... Do you remember John Locke? He was a paraplegic.
Yeah.
And
but we didn't know that at the begining.
No, we did not know it at the beginning. Yeah. And Kate Austin, she was a convict that was she was on the run. She had killed her abusive stepfather, I believe. Then we had Sawyer. He was a con man. I loved Sawyer. He always had great one-liners and everything. Hurley, he was... I don't know. He was fun. He was kind of the just the guy that you'd want to hang out with.
Absolutely.
I think. Yeah. He was a lottery winner.
Yeah. Even without the money, he'd be a great hang.
Oh yeah, he would. Absolutely would. Saeed, he was a CIA informant. And then we had the Kwans, Jin and Sun. They were a married Korean couple. Jin, he was in the Korean mob. And then the other character I wanted to mention, he doesn't show up till a little bit later, but it's Benjamin Linus. And the reason I talk about Ben Linus is because that is my favorite character in the show. Really? So much so that I named my dog after him.
Not Snoopy.
No, not Snoopy. Not Snoopy.
The Peanuts character.
Yeah. So, anyway, what did you kind of think of the show? I know you said you watched it when it
I mean, I think you left out a couple of people in your
I
lineup
did.
of main characters. You got Dominic Monaghan. You know, I'm watching the first couple episodes while we're
who you have seen in
this.
person.
I've seen in person. That's right. Him and I don't remember the other guy's name.
Billy Boyd.
Yes, two of the hobbits from Lord of the Rings were filming a show at a Buc-ee's that we just happened to stop into. It was crazy how crowded it was from these two people in there. But they drew quite the crowd. But I'm watching the first couple episodes, and he's hiking up the side of the mountain, and I'm thinking, this is the second time I've seen this guy hike up the side of the mountain on a quest.
Yes.
Completely different reasons both times, but. It was an interesting thought, nonetheless.
He was a great character because he was a rock or an ex-rock star.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of still, but he was burnt out.
Yeah, well, didn't his brother kick him out? I think of the band or something because he had a drug problem. That was his thing.
Yeah, he had the drug problem. Yeah,
he had a drug problem, and watching he had probably my favorite arc in the entire series because. He had this drug problem and he was constantly I remember in the show, he was constantly trying to find, I think, his stash of drugs. It was heroin. And he eventually overcomes that. Unfortunately, he loses his life. But he gives his life to save everybody else, and it's such a heroic thing. And I did love that character for that. Yeah. And there's that classic... Oh yeah, and just that classic shot where he's getting ready to drown and he writes "Not Penny's boat" on his hand, and it goes up against the glass. Oh my gosh! So I was planning on talking about this kind of in order by season, but it's fine. Yeah. I don't think there's any wrong way to talk about this. Probably if you're listening to this, I'm sure you've at least watched some of Lost. So. Hope we don't spoil much for you, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe I do. I don't know. Whatever. So, I remember watching this. Initially, I think I was living in Clinton at the time, and I would come back up here, maybe once every month or every 2 months, and I'd visit Dad and I'd visit Aunt Kathy and Linda or whatever. And I remember Aunt Kathy and Linda were watching this show, and I would have still been in high school because it was during the first season.
First season, you would have been in high school.
Yeah. And I remember watching it with them, and I enjoyed it, so I went home. And I started watching it some at home as it was, airing or whatever. And I think I watched through season 1 and I watched the finale. And then, it was a year before it aired again. And at that point, I just wasn't really watching, TV, I guess, too much then. So I didn't watch it after that for a while. What really got me into the show, I remember I had a Netflix subscription, but it was back when Netflix was on, just the DVDs. They didn't have the streaming or whatever. And I ended up having the 2 DVD at a time thing. And I thought, I'm gonna watch Lost because I think season 1 through 4 was out at the time. And so I started rewatching it through those discs, and I remember it was I couldn't wait to get the next disc in, so I could see what had happened or what was going to happen. So I watched it like that up until season 4 was done, and then I think right around that time season 5 was starting to air. So from that point on, I watched everything live all the way up until it ended at season 6. So, did you watch it live at all? Do you remember?
Mix. I mean, this was probably one of the first. Okay, so at the time, I didn't have cable whenever this started. I was watching just movies in my free time, so I didn't have cable, I would just watch DVDs or whatever, and I collected a bunch of DVDs. So I wasn't aware of this the first year. But then in 2005, something happened that I think impacted shows like Lost and The Office and a few others, and really just kind of like helped catapult them into new audiences, specifically audiences that maybe didn't have cable subscriptions like me. And that is, I got a Apple video iPod, the first Apple video iPod.
Yeah.
And they put like the first and sometimes the second episodes of a lot of like really popular shows at the time up for free. You could just download and watch them on there. So I download new episodes of stuff all the time and put them on there and go to work. And on my breaks, I would watch it on my little video iPod. Which I gotta say, I can't imagine trying to watch something on a screen that tiny nowadays, but it was the smallest little screen to try and watch a show on, and I did, and it was comfortable at the time, I suppose. So anyways, that was how I first started watching it, and then I bought the rest of the first season, I guess digitally, and watched it on there. And right around the time the second season started, I had started dating my now wife, Allison, and I was living with a roommate who had cable. So I had access to cable then, and we started watching it together in the second season, probably a few episodes in. I don't know when it started. As well as, like, I think we started watching, like, The Office and a couple other things around the same time. And then as our relationship progressed and eventually we moved in together, we continued to watch the show. And this is one of those shows that we watched every week as it came out.
Yeah.
As well as like a number of other shows that we just started discovering and watching. And I got really back into TV at that point, and we've kept cable in some form or another ever since then. And so for me, it was kind of a mix. You know, the first season I watched on my own, and then the second season and so on, me and my wife watched together. But yeah, so that's kind of my experience with it. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I mean, obviously I picked up the first season and bought it
sure
in a medium that I don't have access to anymore because I'm not on the Apple family of things anymore.
You know, I
give those to somebody somehow. That'd be nice.
I know, right?
To give it a life.
Yeah, that digital stuff is just sitting out there, and yeah. I still have. You're over here beside me. I still have all 6 seasons on disc.
Oh wow!
That I will never get rid of. Like, there's, you know, sometimes I'll have DVDs and stuff. I'm like, I'm never going to watch, you know, whatever again. But like, I won't get rid of that. I've still got that. But yeah, I remember it. So I watched it live. I watched it all that, and then I watched it again later. I moved in with my my friend Leif, and because he was moving out of his parents' house, he was looking for a place, and anyway, so we moved in together, and we thought, we'll just share an apartment. And he was looking for something to watch. I'm like, have you watched Lost? And he hadn't. So anyway, I sat down and I watched through that with him. I remember there was a lot of late nights. I think like the last season, because I think I had all the discs at that time. We stayed up till like 4 a.m. finishing the show or something like that.
I miss doing
and
that.
Then I've watched through it. Oh, I know. Didn't have any responsibility. Well, yeah.
I mean, you can.
I mean, I guess maybe I had to go to work, but you didn't care. You know. And then I watched it one more time with my wife. She hadn't seen it, so
wow.
I think that's it. I thought I'd watched it 4 times, but maybe I've just watched it 3 times through.
How'd she enjoy the watch through?
Anyway, yeah. She liked it. She really liked it. She was a little disappointed, I guess, you know, with the end, which
I think we all were.
You know, most people were. There's one person that I know that she enjoyed it, and I don't know if maybe she was kidding herself or what. I don't know. But we'll get to the ending here in just a little bit. So, did you have, running through the whole series, did you have a favorite character at all?
I kind of like. I think I fluctuated a little bit here and there, but I'd say probably three. Three. I'd say it was one of three, depending on what episode you caught me on. In the beginning, I found Locke very interesting because he was kind of mysterious. There's a lot of mystery around him, but there was a lot of mystery around all of them, really. But I think like he seemed the most interesting to me, so I liked him for that. I also liked, who didn't like Hurley? Hurley just seemed like a great hang.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
just like a dude you wanted to get to know, you wanted to be buddies with. So he was always kind of like, you'd really want to watch the show with him type of character.
Yeah.
So there was always some, every time Hurley was on screen, you're like, oh yeah, we're in for a good time, or, it's going to be a little light, it's not going to be that heavy. And also I enjoyed, Jin's storyline. I thought that was really a really fun one. I think his overall arc I really enjoyed. Felt there was kind of, and then like you said, now that we've talked about it, and I'm talking about story arcs, the Charlie Pace story arc too. Dominic Monaghan, his whole thing, that was a great redemptive arc. Yeah, I gotta admit that. That may be my favorite arc now. In my, I think, first rewatch, which I'm in the middle of, you've got me wanting to watch this show all over again, knowing how it's going to end too, which is, I don't know how I feel about that, but I think I'm looking forward to watching Charlie's arc again, and kind of. I think those are the ones that I'll focus on mainly. It's funny is I don't hear a lot of people that mention Dr. Jack as their favorite character. How about you? What are your favorite characters?
No, actually, I would go as far as to say, I remember Linda and I would have conversations about this. She did not like Jack. And at first I was like, he's just, he's whatever. But like rewatching it as many times as I have, I'm like, he's really a jerk. Like, I just don't really know if I care for that character. Whiny. Yeah, he is. Yeah. And I just don't know if I care for that character so much. I'm like, but my favorites, like I said, Benjamin Linus, I liked him because he only wanted what was best for the island. Like he seemed a little ruthless, and he was at times, but it was all for the island, and I admired that about him. And you see him in season 4, I think, or 5, where he's young, and I don't know. You just kind of see that whole thing cultivate, and why he loves the island, and that's what his purpose in life is to take care of the island, and I like that about him. I also liked, like you were saying, John Locke was such a good character, like, because he was very much like Benjamin, like Linus in that way, where he wanted to, he loved the island, and he wanted to make sure, like, go ahead.
Presented those characters. Well, they presented both those characters kind of the same, where it's like you don't know if they are a good guy or a bad guy half the time, and then whenever you think you got a good footing on them, they kind of switch it up on you. And then both of them were almost always opposites or exactly aligned. In a way.
Yeah, and then the other character that I really enjoyed, I liked Sawyer a lot. I liked that because he really had a redemptive arc to him too. He's this con man, and he's just trying to, swindle people, and he ends up being a very likable character that's, really just trying to, win the love of a woman, or, just try to become a better man, I guess. And then he has one of the best lines. Yeah. he has one of the best lines in the series, and it's the first season where they have tied him up to the tree, and Kate goes and is talking to him about something. I can't remember what it is, but he says, "Baby, I'm tied to a tree in a jungle full of mystery," and I love that line so much. It's so good.
So I was rewatching the show, the first few episodes to kind of prepare for this, and I'm watching it, and I'm thinking to myself back on some of our previous episodes, specifically the X-Men episode, and I'm thinking, how is this guy not cast as Gambit?
Oh, he would have been great, right?
Look for Gambit.
Yep. He would have been fantastic as Gambit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were doing all the X-Men movies back then. Come on.
Yeah. Should have been. Should have been. I know. So the first season really just deals with the survivors of Oceanic Flight 815. They were flying, it was a flight from Sydney, Australia to Los Angeles, California, and the plane goes down somewhere in the Pacific, and they're on this island that's just a mystery to them. Really, the first episode, it just plays out like there's been a plane crash and they're on this deserted island and whatever, and it's not until the end of, I think, the episode, if I remember right, where the smoke monster is either the smoke monster or the polar bear that shows up, and
it's the end of the first episode. They don't show it, but you hear it. Just kind of sounds like a big monster moving around in the jungle. Lots of roar. Like, you could almost, I remember thinking, is that a T-Rex? And then I think in a later episode somebody said maybe it's a dinosaur. But, yeah. Because that's kind of what it sounded like.
It did. And you could kind of see the trees moving off in the distance. And so it really, that first season just kind of dives into all of our main characters, and it'll go through the present and what's happening, how they're trying to survive on the island. And then it does the famous flashbacks. And I love that sound. It's that sound when it goes to and I love it to this day every time I hear it. And every episode really, at least in the first season, really focused on one specific character. They would have other characters doing things, but it would have like Jack and his backstory and why he was in Australia. His father's an alcoholic and he ends up dying, so he's kind of estranged from his father, but he's like, oh, I got to go over. Somebody's got to go recover his body, So he does that. And then, is it the first season? It is the first season. So his father's body is in the plane because he's taking it back to the States to bury him. But as he's on the beach, he sees his father walking along the beach and walking into the jungle. And so that's what's so great, I think. So if you've watched any like TED Talks, there's that really famous one with J.J. Abrams, and he talks about his whole mystery box idea, and how every episode of whatever you're writing, you need to have a mystery box. So you answer one thing, but then as you're answering one mystery, you're always presenting another. And I feel like that's what made the show so great, because you're constantly having more things being presented to you. You may have one thing answered and then something else is coming along. But that first season really is focusing on the cast and what led them to get on the plane, and it ends with
your characters.
Yeah. And it ends with John and I think Jack finding the hatch. Yeah. So they find this mysterious hatch on the island. It's like a metal door with a, like an old style, like submarine door. It's just kind of buried. And
I think I remember the final frame of that last episode too was as if you're in there looking out at them.
Yes, because they've blown the hatch open. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, and then that leads us into season 2, and that's when they introduce the others. So they find that there's other people that are on the island. They also introduced some other characters, some other flight survivors that happened to just. I can't remember if they got thrown from the plane. I can't remember exactly
how
how
broke
they
into pieces.
That's right.
I think it's
yes.
the tail section is who that ended up being.
Yep. Yeah, and I remember Michelle Rodriguez was one of the characters that was there. So they find the others, and then of course the flashbacks continue. We continue to learn more and more about these characters. And I remember like Jack and John in this season were having like a lot of friction. You know, John thought things needed to go one way, and Jack thought they needed to go another. Kind of leads us into 3. 3 is I really felt like where it really started picking up some more, because then you've got Desmond, which Desmond may have been in season 2. There's a man living down inside the hatch, and he has been down there for Lord knows how long. And
I think that was season 2.
Was season okay? Every so often,
they met him right away.
No, you're right. They didn't,
because we got breadcrumbs for him throughout the season. I think throughout that second season.
Yes, and every so often, there's an alarm that goes off, and he has to go over and he has to put in. Do you remember what the numbers are?
I don't remember the exact numbers, but I remember like there was a hot debate about the numbers.
Yeah. So I did write them down, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I remember them. I was close. I was close, but then 13, I ended up Googling them just to make sure. It was 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. And at one point, at my height of being like a fanboy about this, I really wanted to get those tattooed on me. But I didn't.
How many people do you think got that tattooed on them?
I don't know.
And I'm looking at it now going, well, I don't remember what these numbers are.
Yeah. So anyway, he's got to put that code in, and he doesn't really know why he's putting that in. He's just been told, you need to put this in before the timer counts down. And oddly enough, those numbers are also the numbers that Hurley used to win the lottery. Yeah. So we end up discovering there's kind of more to these numbers than meets the eye. They've just I'm trying to remember everything exactly that happens in this season, but I remember they had it's a magnetic force or something that the island has that they're by putting that code in, they're dissipating it instead of letting it build up. I think
if I remember correctly, he didn't put it in one time, and that's what brought down their flight, is what he believes.
Yes. Yeah. Because I can't remember what had happened. Did he got drunk or something, and
something.
Yeah.
But I think he put it in after the fact, or there was like a fail-safe or something like that. And
I think
he
so.
enacted it.
Yeah.
I can't remember all the details of it. It's been 20 years.
I know. Exactly. Yeah. So at the end of that season, they find that underwater station. They find there's more than one.
There's more stations. Yeah.
There's more stations. Yeah. So the station is called, it's called Dharma. Like there's a Dharma initiative that they discover. And they think that at first it's just that one hatch station that Desmond is in, but they find out that there's more.
I think like there was like an octagon, and there were like 8 of them, and like 8 different shapes or something like that. So we were always thinking there's going to be like 8 different stations, because they all had like slightly different symbols across all 8 of them. But I think we only got like 3 or 4, and like
I think
one of them was just almost completely destroyed.
Yeah.
But, we didn't get all 8 of them, I want to say.
No, they had one that they were housing those polar bears in. And then they had the one with the hatch and the number input. They had the underwater one. They had one, I think the one you're thinking of was like flooded out, or maybe that was the water one. Like you said, it's been a while since we've watched it. But yeah, so season 4, this is what I thought. Season 4 I thought was just incredible, because I remember it starts off with Jack, but it's like a flashback, and you're like seeing things when he's not on the island. And then by the end of the episode, like Jack, he's going to meet somebody, and
Twist
comes out of a car is Kate, and he tells Kate, we've got to go back to the island. And you realize it's been a flash forward that whole time. So like, that was just incredible to me. Like, my mind was blown. I don't know. Like, because you're so used to having all these flashbacks, and you're like, wait a minute, what is going on here?
Twist.
Yeah.
That made, like, I remember thinking, going forward on like other shows that used this like flashback sequence narrative device.
Mm-hmm.
I remember several shows thinking maybe this is a flash forward and they're going to give us that twist.
Yeah.
And being wrong most of the time, but there were a couple times where like other shows kind of tried to play with that flashing forward and flashing back thing, and that really makes it confusing.
Yeah.
Like I think in Lost, because they kind of set the groundwork for using this device really effectively, they kind of nailed it. And it just fit with the show. But then you see other shows that come along afterwards trying to utilize this same narrative device of, we're going to flash forward, we're going to flash back, we're going to flash sideways, we're going to do alternative realities.
Yep.
And it just didn't work. It felt like reaching in a lot of cases. It gets overused, overplayed. But with Lost, I feel like they used it just right, and it worked.
And I think the reason it did is because once they did that and they established that in that first episode of season 4, they continued with the flash forwards through the whole season. It wasn't like we're going back and forth
all around.
Nope. Everything you saw was a flash forward. And because we find out that at the end of that season, there is a group of people from Jack that are following Jack. They get rescued and taken off the island. And then there's another group of people that John Locke is leading that they want to stay on the island. And the reason, we didn't really get into this, the reason John Locke wants to stay on the island, the reason he loves it so much is because he is, like I said when I was introducing the character, he's a paraplegic. They go into the backstory about how he lost his ability to walk, and I think he had a car accident. I can't remember.
His dad pushed him out a window.
That's right. Yes.
Crazy.
Yes. Thank you. And so when he gets on the island, he wakes up in the first episode, and you see it where he looks down at his feet and he realizes he can move them. But at the time, they haven't told you that he was paralyzed before he went on the island. So, but he's able to walk and move and do all this on the island. And that's why he loves it. He doesn't want to leave the island, because
he can finally utilize all those survival skills he's been sharpening for the past few years.
He can finally live he's living the adventure that he has wanted to live forever, being on this island.
First generation prepper right there.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So then we get to season 5, and season 5 may be my favorite, because this is where they introduce time travel. I'm always a sucker for any time travel story. And a lot of the group goes back in time to the 70s when they first started having the Dharma Initiative there on the island. And that's when we meet Ben Linus as really a teenager, I guess. He's probably, 12 or 13, maybe 14.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember they were building the hatch, and they had come up with the idea that if they blew that hatch up, that Dharma station, that they wouldn't. It would have never went off, and it would have never dragged the plane down. They wouldn't have crashed. And so that whole season, they're trying to like figure out how to prevent what had happened. And I love that scene when Hurley is driving the Volkswagen bus around. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just a fun scene. I don't.
He was just having fun.
Yeah, he was. He was.
That was Hurley. He was always having fun.
It was. So they do. Yeah, they end up. They blow up the hatch, and then that leads us into season 6, and they have a different. They're off the island, but it's like everything's different. Like, do you remember this? Like, Sawyer wasn't a con man. He was like a...
Oh, this is
like
that sideways alternate reality thing.
Yes. Right? He's like an FBI agent, and he says that, like, that LaFleur, when he was a con man, that was like a code. Or no, that was LaFleur was his con man's name or something like that. And then LaFleur in this sideways universe is like a code to get help from the other officers or whatever.
Yeah. See, I think it was like around this time. I think it was like towards the end of this season where I felt like this show is starting to come off the rails.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the directions I was starting to see it go. Mm-hmm. For me, this is where it started losing me.
I agree with you. So when they were showing, they didn't tell us it was a flash sideways for a long time. It was several episodes, and I kept remember thinking, like, what is going on? This just doesn't seem to add up very well. And then when you find out this is like an alternate reality. I still don't know what it was. Was it an alternate reality, or was it like...
I think they were trying to figure out how to stretch it out. I feel like this show had 5 seasons in it, in the tank, and they were trying to stretch it to like 8 seasons or something. Yep. And it just wasn't working. Yep.
Yeah, because like I've heard people throw out theories of like, it's like what's it? It's like not heaven, like the intermediary purgatory. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Like it's purgatory because the very last scene of them in that flash sideways is they're all like meeting at the church, and then they close the door and it gets really bright, and you're like, oh, okay, they all went to heaven, or whatever. I don't know. That fell flat with me. The scenes on the island, I wasn't that upset with mostly. We find out that the smoke monster there's him and this guy named Jacob. Guy. Yeah, and it's like black and white, and I don't really know exactly what they're... Yeah.
But they're brothers. It's weird.
Yeah, it's
that
weird.
Didn't make a whole lot of sense either. I feel like that was one of those things where they started writing it, and they just kept they were just like, we'll gloss over this and we'll move on with the day. We don't need to get into the details because details lock us down. So they were kind of trying to avoid getting too specific on a lot of things, but at the same time, they're setting up a lot of things and not closing off a lot of things. And this is where it really just like it was coming apart for me.
It was like, so you're supposed to, like, I understand a mystery box, but there comes a point, especially when you're wrapping stuff up, you need to be answering more questions than you're leaving. I'm okay. Like, I personally, I like ambiguous endings to things because I think it's fun and it adds conversation. But this was like it was almost like they were
trying to be ambiguous, but at the same time they were like, but this is what we want you to believe. Yeah. Yeah. But it's ambiguous, right? But this is what it is. Yeah. Yeah. But it's kind of ambiguous, and you're like, well, I mean, is it supposed to be ambiguous and mysterious, or are you leading me down a specific path? Because you can't walk both. Yeah.
And then they had the kind of climax was like all the energy was being stored and they had to like put the cork in it. So like Jack is literally like putting a concrete or a rock cork into
big,
where like this light is protruding out, which I thought was, again, I'm just gonna say I thought it was stupid. This show is still my favorite show of all time, but it falls flat in the end. But I did like that Hurley was given the keys to the island at the end. You know, you're like, oh, okay. And then he asked Ben to help him take care of the island, and I thought, well, that's nice, because that's what Ben wanted, you know, the whole time. That's what he's been trying to do. And I did like the very first episode, the very first scene is Jack opening his eyes.
Yeah.
The very last thing you see in the show is Jack closing his eyes, dying.
Was he dying? Okay.
Yeah. And I thought that was I liked the end caps of that. I liked that the numbers that we find out, 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42, we find out are numbers of some of the survivors, like our main cast. It's Jacob, the good guy of the brothers on the island, trying to figure out like who could take care of the island best.
Oh, was that what that was?
Yeah, that's what that was.
How did the numbers play into that?
They were numbered by. Everybody was given a number instead of a name. Yeah. And that's really what they...
Oh, yeah, because it was all their seat numbers on the flight, too.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. One, I can't remember which one was marked off there, and I think that was Locke's number, which that's one thing I was going to ask you. If you could make one change to the series to make the ending better, what would it be? And while you're thinking about that, I can kind of tell you, I thought that it was dumb that I didn't really mention this earlier, but they end up killing off Locke. And then in season 6, when you see Locke, he's actually
the actor, but not the character.
Yeah, you see Terry O'Quinn, but he's not Locke. He's the man in black. Yes. That's also the smoke monster, and he's taking on the appearance of Locke. And I thought they really did a disservice to that character, because John should have been the one to get the keys to the island, I think, because he was all on board with it. I would have been okay if they would have killed off John, but if they would have killed him off by him fighting the man in black and defeating him, but dying in the process in order to save the island, like, I would have been okay with something like that. But I don't know. I thought they did a disservice to his character and kind of went backwards with him a little bit, but that's the change. I thought they should have kept John actually alive, and they could have killed him off in some capacity, like I said. But I don't know.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. Okay, so to answer your question, if I could change the show, if I could make one change to the show, okay, I would. Season 3, episode 23, the last episode of season 3 would be the end of the show. It would be Dominic or what's his name? What's his character's name? Charlie. Holding up his hand, not Penny's boat. End of the show. Just end it there.
Really?
That's the best ending you can hope for. That's it. The rest of it is just like, it's cliffhanger left off to nothing. Yeah. Maybe we get like a 2-hour made for TV movie where they wrap it up a little neater, like they actually get rescued from the island and they abandon all this like purgatory garbage and focus on, it's just like a mysterious island and we don't necessarily have to have the answers to what the island is, but they get rescued and they return to real life. Yeah. That would be my fix.
That would have been your fix. Okay. But then we wouldn't have had season 5 which was so
that's
good. Or Daniel Faraday. I didn't even talk about Daniel Faraday.
Yeah.
He was the physicist that invents, I think,
And
he's the reason for the time travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, they killed him, and he was another one of my favorite characters. I liked him a lot.
They killed him back in the 70s at the hand of his own mother. That's just the weirdest thing.
Yeah. The whole show, man. It's a weird show.
Yeah.
But you're right. I know I've seen some interviews with J.J. Abrams and Damien Lindelof, who's the other writer and co-creator of the show. They went into the show with some ideas, like this is what we're going to do. But they didn't know, like they didn't go into the show knowing how they were going to end it.
Oh, I've heard that they went into it knowing how they were going to end it.
Oh, really?
Interviews.
Okay.
I watched a couple of like recap YouTube things before doing this to kind of get fresh on the show myself. And that was brought up a couple times, is that they knew what they wanted to do for an ending, like a final ending, but they didn't know how to get there after they had built up so much over the season. So that's why
that must have been how
feels rushed and everything, is because they didn't know how to get from the end of 5 to the end of 6. So they kind of written themselves back into a corner. I could kind of see that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't like the ending that they had planned to begin with. So, and also because I felt like that was, so whenever you look back on watching the show and being back in that time, put yourself 15 to 20 years ago, listening to all the theories online and all the people talking about like what's going on with Lost, what does it all mean? Purgatory was at the top of what people's assumption of what the whole show was about. It's going to be purgatory. That was almost always the answer that people would come to. So I felt like whenever we got to the end and it turns out it was purgatory this whole time, was kind of I was hoping for a little better. I was hoping that they'd be smarter than their audience, than most of their audience, and come up with something a little more unique. It just kind of, I guess at the time, it felt like they were like, well, the audience wants to see it be purgatory, so we'll make it purgatory. And then hearing interviews later where they're like, yeah, that was kind of our plan the whole time, but we just didn't know how to get there in the end. Yeah. I don't like any of those answers.
Yeah. They definitely could have done something else with it. But really, like, you think about it, name me, maybe you can name one, but name me 2 or 3 shows that ended how they should have ended.
Well, okay, I'm on the spot. I can't think of anything on the top.
There's more. My point is, there's more shows that fall flat when they end than there are that aren't. Because I think you get to a point, especially when it's a series that's got such longevity to it. Like, I know this is 6 seasons, but that's a decent length of a show for a series. You get to a point where you've invested in these characters, you know the story, and your audience has already made up their mind how it's going to end. So you can't. How do you reach that? You know,
that's where the Brits got us on TV, because they're like, we're going to do like 4 seasons of this, and that's going to be it. Yeah. And they had a whole plan. And they shoot it all out. If it works,
this is what we're
doing.
If
it doesn't.
Yep. And that's one thing I do. Like, I enjoy watching a lot of miniseries for that reason, because it's they know what they're doing. This is the start, this is the middle, this is the end, this is what we're doing in episode 9, this is our last episode, and it's done. And like I said, I think that this show, it really was, I know it's cliche to say, but I really think it was ahead of its time in how they
for sure
did the character building and how they did the mystery, and it really kept viewers coming back, because you're like,
they redefined drama on television. It did, for sure.
It did, and there was nothing else like it on the air at the time. maybe the X-Files, but at that point, I think the X-Files had kind of past its peak.
I think that this is like our generation's Twin Peaks. So like back in the 80s, they had Twin Peaks. That was like the big show.
Yep.
This is our generation's version of that. I feel like we're going to have like some sort of, there might be a revival or like a sequel series even at some point, I can imagine. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Upon revisiting this show, where do you think we could fit Corey Feldman in this? Anywhere?
Well, I would want to say as Charlie, but Dominic Monaghy did such a good job, and I love Dominic. He could have been. He could have been
as the brother.
Yes. Yes.
There it is.
There we go.
All right,
Corey,
so we fit Corey in.
Come talk to us, buddy.
Come be on the show.
Dead serious. Yes, we would.
Anything you want to cover, we'll cover it.
Anything. We'd love to have you on the show. So your questions that you asked me.
That's right.
In the beginning.
So, of all the answers to Desert Island top 5 lists, or what would you bring on a desert island, what is the best answer you've heard, and what is the worst answer you've heard?
Best answer I've heard is a satellite phone.
Oh, that's a good answer.
Yeah. Satellite phone, I think is great. You know, I've heard cell phone. I'm like, well, that's stupid because there's no. But a satellite phone, you're gonna have service. The dumbest would probably be. I think I've heard somebody say a TV.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what are you gonna? There's nothing to plug it into. Like, and even if, let's say, they're giving you you want a TV, we're going to give you a generator, whatever it is.
Whatever.
Suspend disbelief, you can plug it in.
Magical.
What are you going to do with that? Yeah. You're just saying, I'm done. I'm on this island. I'm done.
Watch TV till pass away or disintegrate or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that falls in line with mine. The worst answer is always, I guess it's really the worst question is always like Desert Island top 5 DVDs. Well, if you're on a desert island, you can't watch DVDs now, can you? Because you're going to need the DVD player and the TV and all these other things. So for me, it was always those DVD questions. Yeah. The best answer I think I've heard is if you remember the episode of The Office where Dwight said he would bring a book and on the inside he'd have hollowed out with a knife and all these other things that he needed to survive. So I like the loophole aspect of that one.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
Well, all right. You got any final thoughts you want to share on Lost?
It's my favorite series, my favorite television series. It's I want to go back and watch it again now that we've talked about it, and I probably will. I have time at my lunches. I have 30-minute lunches every day, so I could slowly watch through the whole thing.
There we go. Definitely, again, I think it's near the top of my list of rewatches for now, for sure.
It is. I keep saying it. It is a little bit tarnished because of the last season, but
I'll just watch the first couple and I'll drop off.
Yeah, you'll watch through season 3, and it goes exactly how you think it needs to go, and then that's it. I'll watch through season 5. It blows up. Everybody dies. That's the end of it. Yeah. But
maybe that is the better ending.
Yeah. But I don't know. It really changed television. It really changed the way I want to watch television. When I watch a TV show, I want to be hooked. I don't want to have, some long drawn out boring thing. I want to be hooked within the first 5 minutes of watching it, because I'm a person, I value my time a lot, and I'm not going to spend my time watching something that's boring me. Like, it is, so maybe it's spoiled me in that way. Like, there's been a lot of TV shows that I've watched since then, I've tried to watch, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't doing it for me. And Mindy's always like, we just got to stick it out for a couple episodes. I'm like, I'm not sticking it out for 3 episodes, 3 hours to finally get to something interesting.
Well, I'll give you the first 6 episodes usually.
Will you really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta be hooked that first episode.
I'll get in for the first season, but yeah, like you gotta like. I feel like for me, I give you a decent amount of lead in the beginning, but if you don't start showing me that you've earned that in some way, then it goes away pretty quick. But you can, I can get breadcrumbs, and I can be drawn in for a season. Now, it may not be the first thing I watch, or the second or third. But it's on my list, and if I've got nothing else to watch, I'll end up watching it. Yeah. Well, all right. We've reached another checkpoint, my friends. Remember, sharing is caring. Reviews help a lot. And keep those tokens ready. Until next time.
See you then. We forgot to mention what we were going to be doing the next week, but that's okay. We can leave it as a mystery. Yeah. It makes sense with the Lost theme. So.
Now we could do we could drop in a little thing after the credits. We could cut in something else real quick if you wanted to.
This podcast takes tokens is a Clay Street production.
One last thing before we go. Next episode, we'll be covering Vacation. 1983's Vacation, not the remake, the recent one.
National Lampoon's.
Covering the original National Lampoon's Vacation, Chevy Chase. So feel free to watch along. We'll see y'all next week.
Now, I will tell everybody real quick before we sign out here, I was really trying to talk Derek into just leaving it a mystery to go with the theme of the mystery of Lost. But this isn't a dictatorship. It's a democracy. So we decided on this. But
this is after the post credits. So if they're still listening at this point, it's a bonus for them.
That's true. True.
Some people will just check out whenever they hear those closing credits. Yeah, they're done. Yeah, these people get a nice little bonus.
This is your Marvel Studios after the credits extra.
It's our first post-credit scene.
That's right.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks, y'all.